Hello again. I just wanted to follow up on a TikTok that I made recently in which I said we do not compare disabilities. We don't compare disabilities because it creates a toxic environment within the community, makes things quite competitive, and people start fighting over resources rather than collaborating. It tends to contribute to misinformation and misunderstanding around particular conditions, and it also just feeds into the logic of eugenics. None of those things are good. We want to avoid all of those things. So how can we talk about difference in the disability community, which we need to be able to do without comparing disabilities? One thing that we can do is to be very clear about what we're talking about. So if somebody has particular support needs, requiring assistance, say, bathing, toileting, eating, cleaning, getting in and out of bed, things like that, that person may legitimately have more support needs than somebody else. That's a thing that we can totally say. We can absolutely acknowledge that. Access needs should just be something that are built in and accounted for, but that's not the world we live in. And so some people's access needs are less frequently met, or are more difficult to meet, or are not accounted for, or tend to be in competition with other people's access needs more often. And so that's the thing we need to be able to talk about. We absolutely need to be able to talk about social difference. We need to be able to talk about the ways in which other axes of marginalization, like race, class, gender, citizenship status, whether somebody speaks the language, all of those things, education levels, right? All of those things 100% impact a person's experience of disability. And that's something that we need to be able to talk about. We definitely need to be able to talk about priorities in research and funding. So some conditions are, and that's absolutely related to social difference. And all of that will impact a person's experience of disability relative to other disabled people. So some conditions do in fact get taken more seriously within the medical system and are researched and funded and have established programs and pathways through the medical system. This is something that I've experienced as an amputee, but also as somebody who has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and kind of associated conditions. When it comes to EDS, I've had to be my own care coordinator, right? I have had to be the one to learn about my condition and coordinate care among a lot of different specialists. With respect to amputation, I have had to do so little related to my own care because there are already established pathways through the medical system that are really aligned with rehabilitation. And that is because of the priorities of capitalism, of government, of sort of dominant institutions in society. And they want to see somebody rehabilitated and back to work. And also talk about society's awareness of different conditions and like the ways that they're portrayed and then the narratives that exist around them. So there are very different narratives that exist around something like fibromyalgia or ME/CFS as opposed to something like SCI, amputation, cancer. Like they're just different narratives, and it will impact people differently. Like you will have a different experience of disability based on how society views and interacts with your condition. So there are so many different ways that we can and should discuss difference within the disability community. Like those are only a couple of them, but notice how none of those examples are saying that any condition is better or worse than any other condition, right? It's being very specific about the ways that particular conditions impact someone or the ways that particular conditions are viewed and treated in society. Oh my God, I forgot to mention symptoms. Like we actually do need to talk about differences in the ways that people's bodies and minds experience particular conditions. Like we do need to talk about that. But when we just compare two conditions, like when we treat this like some sort of like sports bracket, I don't know a lot about sports, but like when we treat it like some sort of like sports bracket, right? Like that at the end we'll find like the worst condition. Like when we do that, and some people do that, we actually don't really reveal anything about what it's like to experience that condition, like what it's like to live with that condition, or also like how different people might experience that condition. So like for me, I have been in pain every single day of my entire life. So I have a lot of experience dealing with pain, not always well, but like probably better than people who don't have that same experience. Meanwhile, I was talking to a friend who does life nauseous. Like she is nauseous every day of her life. And that's just how it goes. And I would really struggle with that. When I'm nauseous, I am on the bathroom floor feeling very sorry for myself, begging the universe to end it because it's just not an embodied experience that I handle well. Meanwhile, she said for her, that's pain. She does not deal with pain well. She really struggles whenever she's in pain. And those are things that like you would not actually be able to have a conversation about if you just kind of like notice how I didn't mention any of the conditions, right? Like if you just kind of like threw those conditions like on like your football fantasy brand. I don't know if that's how football fantasy. I don't know if that's how that actually works. But anyway, like you wouldn't get any of that information. You wouldn't be able to talk about how it impacts particular people. You wouldn't be able to talk about how it's managed. You wouldn't be able to talk about how to support somebody. So like, yeah, there's not some secret, right? Like just be specific and you will have better conversations about disability and difference than if you are just comparing conditions.